distribute a total of 52,000. It's on my screen here.
Did we lose you, Don? Mr. Gregoire? It looks like we did temporarily lose Don Gregoire, the Director of Water for St. Croix. So I would like to ask if CEO Hodge, if you can continue with the presentation in his absence.
Yes, certainly. So in terms of water voucher distribution, to date, WAPA has distributed 52,560 vouchers to customers, and it's continuing at our Sunny Isle Business Office. And we've also distributed vouchers to VI Housing Authority and other private housing communities, Meals and Wheels participants.
And just to pause here, Mr. Hodge, it looks like we've got Mr. Gregoire back on the line.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Hodge, yeah, apologize everyone, I got disconnected. Mr. Hodge, do you lift up on the Meals on Wheels? The last thing I heard. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, we go to the next slide, phase 2.
Okay, so yeah, as Mr. Haas mentioned, we did distribute some of the vouchers through the Meals on Wheels program. In addition, WAPA, allowed others to pick up on behalf of the elderly community as well. And we also provided a service to renters. Once they provide a copy of the lease or affidavit, they were definitely eligible for voucher distribution. So the distribution was in collaboration with Vitima Logistic, Department of Health, pond managers, Ving, VIPD. So there's several government agencies that were part of the distribution 3-day process. And we're going to be doing something similar also with the pitchers and faucet filters once they reach early on in the year. Next slide. On January 5th, WAPA plans to put out $75 credits to our customers for relief of the for the flushing for stagnant water. And we are expected to start the distribution process for the faucet filters and the pitchers also in January of 2024. And I just want to make a note that the funding for the pitchers and the faucet filters is from DPNR, from the Clean Water Drinking Fund. Continued outreach community town halls is scheduled for January 2024. Boots on the ground, led by the Department of Health in impacted areas in collaborations with DPNR and with the local housing community. And FEMA is also assisting with developing interactive maps that we're going to be launching on our Clean Water Drinking website shortly. And they're also going to be assisted with the water sampling and, results, posting those results on the maps. Next slide. WAPA is offering free lead and copper testing. We're speccing out some of the lead test kits that we're going to offer to businesses and residents as well. And then we definitely want the community involvement. We want to do our final round of samplings. We're looking to do sampling throughout the entire water distribution system. We have basically separated those areas into zones. So we're going to be doing probably 80+ samples in all the locations to make sure that we get a good I would say, a good feel for the water quality throughout the entire water system as well. So to date, we also, the 36 homes that we initially found high elevations of lead, we have a contractor that's out as we speak. We're going to finish probably in the second week of January. To date, we have about 15 out of the 36 locations that we have installed new service lines with all lead-free components. And we're going to continue to push that initiative forward so we could reduce some of those components in our water system that have high concentrations of lead. Water quality team has also expanded with the local national experts to improve the corrosion control process. Corrosion control, like I say, is something we do 24 hours a day. It's something that WAPA has been doing. We monitor it. As the system changes over the years, it continues to get older. We have more losses. So we definitely thought that it was a good opportunity for us to, revisit our corrosion control program and make some improvements on that as well. So that is something that is ongoing. Next slide. To date, $30 million have been obligated to WAPA from FEMA, and we have approximately 30 million has been obligated from EPA, and then we have another 1.5 billion that we're doing for the prudent replacement. And from the water perspective, we realize that our infrastructure is getting old, it's failing. And, ultimately our end goal would be to replace all the ductile piping. That's pretty much the cause of the brown water. And we would replace all those components, those brass components that were manufactured back in the day with high concentrations of lead. So the goal of the prudent replacement is to bring our system to industry standards. And, basically that involves new piping, additional storage, new tanks, new pump stations. And we looked at expansion throughout the community. We looked at areas with water quality issue. We try to eliminate a lot of dead ends as possible. So all those different aspects of our prudent replacement has been taken into consideration for this prudent replacement. I think that is the last slide. Okay. Staying informed, WAPA continues to send out press releases. We're active on social media. We do a lot of radio tours, radio ads, and we stay tuned to also our WAPA alerts. And now with the establishment of the new Clean Water USVI website, it also gives you another channel to get, decisive and clear information in regards to the water situation as it progresses over time on the island of St. Croix. Next slide. And that is our presentation. Thank you. And I guess I'll be open to questions soon as Chanel gets to go ahead.
Thank you, Don. So at this time, we're actually going to go to the next slide and provide the Department of Planning and Natural Resources to provide some updates. And so note that we do have a very extensive time period for the Q&A portion that will be following the presentations. Commissioner Oriol?
Hi, good morning, Nolan. Can you guys see me?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't see myself, so just good morning to all the participants. My name is Jean-Pierre Oriol. I am the Commissioner for the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, and I am one of the co-incident commanders for the state of emergency that was declared with the water issue. So Don really did a fantastic job in terms of giving all the detailed information as to where we are. Again, DPNR is the regulatory agency, and we are providing support in two ways. So the first, as Don mentioned, our objective right now is to clear the system. There's been a number of sampling events that have taken place that have given us a lot of information at this point in time. And a lot of that actually is letting us know that the first set of sampling for the red and brown water issue that we had, when we started to do surveillance sampling specifically for lead and copper, we're now finding that the prevalence of lead and copper was not as high as originally thought. There's been a lot of detailed analysis that has taken place. The most recent sampling was the sequential sampling that was done by the EPA in mid-November, in which we got the results released to us right before Thanksgiving, indicating that, again, the prevalence of lead and copper was not as high as we thought. So with our objective right now is to sample the entire system, and Don mentioned that we're breaking the distribution system up into 16 quadrants, and we're going to try and take a minimum of 5 samples in each quadrant, of which we're actually starting or has started this week, with the goal of analyzing for both a first draw sample as well as a second 5-liter sample. And it gives us information at the tap, not only from the end user, but then also as we draw that second sample that's coming from further into the distribution system to include the service lines. Again, our goal is to sample the entire system, see what those results tell us, and our hope and what our goal is to find out that the prevalence of lead and copper based on this very thorough sampling technique is going to lead us to say that there are minimal instances. And again, if we look at our historical data, from 2016 to 2020, WAPA was doing their lead and copper compliance sampling, and they always exceeded the 90th percentile. Out of 30 samples in each district, there was only about 1 sample that would come back positive for lead or copper, and usually that was attributed to some of the local plumbing that was from that particular sample point. And so, our historical data tells us that we don't have a lead and copper issue, but out of an abundance of caution, after those initial sample came back and showed high for lead and copper, we decided to take the highest precaution and issue the no drinking order. But we're fairly confident right now, given the additional flushing that is taking place, along with the removal, a lot of the possible brass components that could contain lead above the allowable limits, just because they're older and those things have changed over time, that we're going to find that the system is going to show that we are above the 90th percentile for lead and copper in terms of presence throughout the distribution system. The second way that we're supporting the actions that are taking place right now is through the state drinking water revolving funds that are provided to us through the EPA or by the EPA, and it comes to DPNR, but it's issued then to the utility. And so we're working very closely with WAPA to ensure that funding for the upgrades in the system that we want to make immediately, that we are providing them with access to that funding. Don mentioned that 36 service lines have already been contracted, and I believe it's 12 service lines have already been dug up, replaced, and those components swapped out. So we're systematically going to those areas that tested high previously and removing those components, and then going back and testing and seeing where those samples, what the results of that sampling is again. So, WAPA is working very closely with FEMA so that we can have a good map to show everyone where the 16 quadrants are, where we're looking to have the samples taken. And again, the goal is to get as many homes as possible to volunteer the right of entry. It does require some sequestration for several hours of a particular tap, but we're confident that enough of the people of the Virgin Islands, particularly St. Croix, want to assist us in this regard, have their tap sampled and know for sure that their area does not contain a high level of contaminants. Specifically to address, particularly the towns and the businesses in the towns, early on, we did include Christiansted and Frederiksted in our sampling. In the town of Christiansted, one sample point came back high on a first draw sample. They did investigate the location near the boardwalk for that high sample. And if I'm not mistaken, they did change out some of the components in that location. And then for our testing in Frederiksted, we know Frederiksted that the lines, particularly service lines in Frederiksted, have been replaced through 2, if not 3 different phases. When I started in 2019 as commissioner, WAPA was funding phase 2 of the Frederiksted waterline rehabilitation project through the drinking water funds. We know that the water does not originate, so going back to the actual results for Frederiksted, there were some high samples on first draw. And again, we know that the water is not coming from Frederiksted, but rather it's coming from, Wim and coming down Marcel and then entering the town of Frederiksted. So that actually caused WAPA to also install some hydrants and some additional flushing to take place. And we've resampled those locations so that once those results are known, but the second draw samples all came back non-detect for lead and copper. So again, we know that it's about stagnant water. It's not about the source water. And our goal is to, again, continue to sample the entire system and build that confidence in where we are, with the long-term goal of having prudent replacement replace all the aging infrastructure. But then even in the short term, focusing on the corrosion inhibitor and changing out of certain service lines that we believe may have some older metal brass components that are above the lead level allowable, since 2015. So that's really it for me, Chanel, and I'm here to answer any questions from the public as best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Oriol. At this time, next slide, please. We're going to ask Department of Health to provide their updates. Assistant Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Good day, beautiful people. Health Commissioner Justa Encarnacion is unable to attend today's meeting due to a scheduling conflict. However, her team is here on her behalf. I am Assistant Commissioner Ruben Malloy. We also have with us Dr. Esther Ellis, our Territorial Epidemiologist, and Deputy Director for Preparedness, Aisha Rivers, representing the Department of Health. As the co-incident commander, Commissioner Encarnacion and her team has been fully engaged in this Clean Water Initiative, ensuring the health of our community. We have focused our efforts on education and outreach. In collaboration with the entire team and support of other initiatives, Department of Health has led the following initiatives. We've established a hotline for residents to call and get answers to questions. We've conducted lead and copper testing outreach. We've actively participated in the messaging, ensuring public health perspective is represented. We've developed frequently asked question sheets, FAQ sheets. We've done community outreach, which we have dubbed boots on the ground, Dr. Esther Ellis, and then Deputy Director Aisha Rivers will provide the Department of Health updates. Dr. Ellis.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Assistant Commissioner Ruben Malloy. We have tested, as Assistant Commissioner Ruben Malloy said, children. So we've focused on providing blood testing for children 6 and under to determine if there is issue with if there is an issue with lead in the blood of children. So hold on one second. I'm adding a Zoom there. Okay, great. And then we, as of Friday, we've cumulative tested 1,270 individuals. Cumulative detected pending confirmation is 50. Confirmed lead negative 44 and confirmed copper negative 43, confirmed lead positive 2. So we have had 2 venous blood draws that did come back as confirming lead in the blood for 2 individuals, and then confirmed copper positive 3.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ellis. We're not able to see you right now if you do have your camera. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Great. Childhood lead exposure can cause neurocognitive deficits, developmental delay, ADHD, kidney toxicity, and anemia. And higher exposures of lead can cause encephalitis, seizures, hearing loss, acute kidney injury, vomiting, and diarrhea. There are many common sources of lead exposure: water, paint, soil, car batteries, lead in imported toys, cookware, spices, herbs, fishing weights and sinkers, as well as industrial, automotive, and maritime occupations. Children are at greater risk of lead exposure, which is why we focused on the 6 and under. Children can actually absorb nearly 4 times as much lead from the GI tract than adults. And children less than 2 years of age retain half of absorbed lead, whereas adults retain only 1%. Lead can cross the blood-brain barrier, placenta, and breast milk, and lead is retained for prolonged periods in particular tissues and blood. It can be retained for 28 to 36 days, soft tissue 40 days, bones greater than 25 years. All children should undergo blood lead testing at ages 12 and 24 months. And the USVI Department of Health was attempting to test 1,000 children, 0 to 6, and thus far we exceeded that goal with over 1,200 students or children tested. And we did go to many of the schools, public, private, as well as daycares, to test students where they were. Management of childhood lead exposure: if it's less than 3.5 mcgs per deciliter, the recommendation is to repeat testing in 1 year. If it's 3.5 to 14, repeat testing 1 to 3 months. Identify and remove sources of lead exposure, conduct anemia screening, developmental screening, and increase iron, calcium, and vitamin C in the diet. If you would like additional information from the Department of Health, you can call our hotline 340-712-6499. The Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit is 866-265-6201, and the Region Poison Control Center is 800-222-1222. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Next slide, please.
Deputy Director Aisha Rivers.
Okay,
Yes.
apologies. More updates from DOH. Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasant good morning and compliments to the upcoming season. I'm Aisha Rivers, the Deputy Director of Public Health and Preparedness. We have an initiative, Boots on the Ground. Sorry. We have an initiative, Boots on the Ground, that we started in November 13th. Our focus is to get a baseline of the community, especially those that's been affected by the areas that lived within the areas of interest that was identified, and see how they're doing, how we can assist them and provide additional services that they they may need. The team consisted of course, Department of Health, Department of Natural Planning Resources, Virgin Islands Police Department, VI Water Power Authority, and VI Housing Authority. My apologies. VI Housing Authority, a very important player in this one, because especially utilizing their community centers. So, like I said, we started in November 13th, and to date we completed 241 surveys, whether it's on-site or individuals taking the QR code home and conducting the surveys on their own. We have conducted to date 10 boots on the ground outreach, and one is scheduled for today. We conducted one in Mumbichu community. We did 3 during the water voucher distribution at the Ag Fair, 2 in Williams-Lehigh Community Center, 2 at Joseph E. James Community Center, and conducted opportunity for surveys during the EPA Townhall that was conducted this month. We are concluding this month with Aridias. We conducted 1, and then we will be returning to Aridias Heights this evening, 5:30 to 7:30, to continue on that survey and boots on the ground initiative. Like I said, tonight will be our last one for the year. However, we will resume in mid-January. Back to you, AC.
Thank you, Didi. We are available to answer any questions for the Department of Health.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Department of Health. Next slide, please. All right, you can go ahead and stop sharing. So at this time, we are going to go into our Q&A section. And we do want to emphasize that this town hall is specific to provide our small businesses the opportunity to voice their concerns, to ask their questions, and to get additional information. We will be providing an additional town hall for community members in January. So of course, we understand that our business members are also community members, but we want to ensure that the media does not overpower the voice of our small businesses. We have been receiving questions in the chat. And so at this time, we're going to open that up to the individuals who have first provided questions in the chat. So the first question is for DPNR. And actually, I'm sorry. I would like to take this time to introduce any folks who are on the line from the Environmental Protection Agency. EPA?
Yes, hi. Let's see. Sorry. Good morning, all. I'm Claude Walker, the Senior Advisor to Lisa Garcia, the Regional Administrator for EPA. I'm on the line here. I'm in St. Thomas in our office. I believe one of my other colleagues, Christine Ash, should be on, but she may be in another meeting. Thank you for having us participate in this meeting, as we did the previous town hall in Frederiksted that we had a few weeks ago. We look forward to any additional town halls and to participate in these meetings to provide information to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Do we have any individuals on the line from Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs? All right, not at this time. I would like to also provide representatives from Vitima to introduce themselves.
Hey, good morning, Chanel. This is Director Jocelyn from Vitima. I'm on and been very much engaged with EPA, DPNR, Water Power Authority, as well as FEMA. So stand by to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for the invite today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Jocelyn. We'd lastly like to provide the GVI if there anyone present from GBI that would like to introduce themselves as well? Or from the Office of the Governor?
Good afternoon, Richard Mota, Office of the Governor.
Thank you for joining, Mr. Mota. So at this time, as mentioned, we are going to open up the floor for Q&A. We're going to first start off with the questions that have been provided in the chat. So as mentioned, the first question that we received is for Department of Planning and Natural Resources. And that question is, why did we test stagnant water?
So, oh, I can't see you guys. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. So it's important to note that in the original sampling that was done, we were not testing for lead and copper specifically. Lead and copper testing protocols are specific. Harold is on, he can speak more directly to it, but I believe there's the sampling protocol that we use is, I think, a 3 T's sampling protocol.
No.
Morning,
Yes,
Harold.
good morning. It's Harold Mark, DPNR Environmental Program Manager for the Drinking Water Program. Essentially, there's specific protocols for sampling for lead and copper, but the sampling that was done at those water meters was primarily for looking for red water. So whether or not the water was stagnant was not really an issue for those sample collections. With lead and copper, those samples are always collected at the user's taps. But again, this initiative was just to try and identify the levels of iron that were present in areas that were affected with high levels of red and brown water. Over.
Thank you, Harold. And then I would also add that we know that one particular sample point for the sequential sampling was something that had been stagnant, I think, for several days. I think that in anything that we do, you also want to have a control point as well. And so I think there were, it was 11 homes, and there was a minimum of 6 samples were taken for each sampling point. Some were actually longer based on the run back from the home all the way back to where the distribution line was. But it's always good to have a point that's outside of what it is you're sampling for. You use that as a control in a lot of instances. So we were also asked that question, well, why did one of the sequential samples include something that had not moved? But again, I think it's always important to have that as well.
Thank you. Next question received. I'll direct this one to DPNR as well. What is the range of lead levels in our drinking water? If a range is not available, what is the average level of lead in our drinking water?
This is Mr. Mark, DPNR. The best data that should be used would be the WAPA's compliance data. If we want to talk about the range of levels of lead that is found in the drinking water. We cannot use the data that was collected at the meter, since those were not appropriate locations, and those data, I should say, those samples may have been compromised in terms of how the samples were collected. But with WAPA's compliance data, what I can say is that the most recent sampling indicated that they had a lead action level of 3 parts per billion. So essentially what that means is that the 90th percentile, the 90th level, was at 3 parts per billion, and most of the other samples were either non-detect or far less than the 3 parts per billion. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Excuse me. Another question that we received, is it only small businesses or are nonprofits included today? Yes. So the invitation was shared with small businesses as well as nonprofits. We shared this with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Hotel and Tourism Association, with the our town, Frederickstead, as well as some personal invites also went out to a couple other nonprofits. But we did promote this particular town hall on social media, as well as sharing on our press release. And we also had an ad placed in the VI Daily News last week, as well as mentioned, the radio tours that we conducted over the past week or so also invited individuals, or excuse me, small businesses and others to join this particular town hall. Note that we will continue to provide education. As mentioned, we are planning an additional town hall coming up in January, but we wanted to ensure that we provided small businesses the opportunity, as well as the nonprofits, to voice their concerns today, as we will continue to create that opportunity for a dialogue. Another question that was received is, what is the anti-corrosive that's being pushed? And they're probably referencing the corrosion control program. So I'd like to provide WAPA the opportunity to discuss that more, the corrosion control program. Mr. Gregoire?
Yes, good morning again. So the corrosion control program is basically we inject phosphate into the system. What the phosphate does, it coats the pipe and it prevents leaching of those other components, that the brass components. So our initial system, it started from the 1940s, 1950s. It was turned over to WAPA. EPA did come out with some new guidance, I think in 2011, indicated that any component being used in the drinking water system needs to have less than 0.25% lead. Initially, when we did the exploratory dig, we digged up some of the components. One location was Strawberry, and we realized that a lot of the older components in our system contains more than the 0.25% lead. So the phosphate is supposed to coat the pipes and prevent leaching of those material into the system. And that is a 24 operation. Like I indicated before, as the system gets older, parameters change. When we switched from the desal units to the reverse osmosis units, the water quality also have different qualities as well. So we're basically reassessing our phosphate injection. The vendor was on island. They came, they took some initial readings in regards to our water quality as it sits right now. They gave us some initial recommendations that we could carry out quickly. And then there's some long-term recommendations that we're looking to also execute, where we're going to add a second phosphate injection system mid-island. So everything that's west of the Kings Hill tank going towards Frederickstead will also be getting phosphate injection. That way we could maximize the phosphate and maintain specific levels throughout our distribution system.
Thank you for that explanation, John. Just a short reminder to all our presenters that we do have the ASL interpreters as well as the live translations for Spanish and French Creole. So if you can slow down your responses, as much as we know that you guys are truly experts, we want to ensure that we're providing that access to all individuals that have joined us today. Another question that was, well, this is more of a recommendation from one of the attendees. They recommended that the presenters show results in graphical format to better understand. I can note that Department of Health as well as WAPA and DPNR do have active sites that share information graphically, as well as the cleanwaterusvi.com website will be including more graphics. One of the things that we are working with right now is with FEMA on creating interactive maps, as was mentioned during Don's presentation, that we'll have posted on the website, sharing on social media so people can really interact with the sampling and the test results. Another question received is more of actually a comment from Donna Christensen, representing the Harvey Community Health Pilot Project, to which she is the director. She'd like to thank WAPA, EPA, FITEMA, and Department of Health for helping to make sure that Bethlehem Village and Prophet Hills who were initially excluded are now eligible to receive their vouchers. A special thank you, Department of Health, for providing on-site lead testing in those communities, commonly known as Harvey, as is mentioned with the boots on the ground, as well as the other housing communities that have had vouchers available on site and assuring that they continue to. A question she has asked, when can we anticipate the impacted list or the neighborhoods that are impacted to be updated based on the new current sampling? EPA, would you like to provide that information or update, Mr. Walker?
I think Christine Ash is on, and I believe she'll provide that information if she can.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. I actually got pulled away for a minute. Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So the question is, when can we expect to receive the current sampling results that EPA recently tested?
So, hi, everyone. I'm Christine Ash. I'm the Acting Deputy Director for our Water Division in EPA Region 2. I believe that the sampling results from the sequential sampling in November have been posted on EPA's website. We are preparing a report with our conclusions and recommendations from the study, and that should be available later this month. And I can post the link to our website in the chat, or I could share it with you, Ms. Peterson.
That would be great. Thank you. And then we'll go ahead and share that link with everyone so they can go directly to EPA's website to provide those, to see those results.
Thank you.
We've also made note that we will continue to expand community outreach efforts with additional print ads moving forward, as we did for the water voucher distribution, as we prepare for the filter distribution, and that it is noted within the AVIS. As we know, many Crucians do utilize the AVIS to stay updated. So I see a hand raised. Desi Maynard, you're recognized if you'd like to ask a question.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Just wanted to first say that I am a business owner. I own a small farm, so I have quite a few concerns. I wish you guys had done a different format where you would allow for people to actually ask questions of specific departments, because I have a page full of questions right now. And I'm trying to find out which one is for which. So for you, I actually have a question. How can we trust that we're going to find that WAPA is giving us clear information when you have had your face on 3 different statements stating that you would be out to give communications with the radio to the public to give updates, and then when you do a no-show, you guys just pull down the ad. So instead of actually being accountable and saying, oh, I was not able to be there at this time, I will be there at another time for updates, you simply say that you'll be there and then not be there. So it's very hard to trust that you guys are going to say something and actually hold to it. Because if you say something wrong, you often just pull away the what's it called? The ad itself. Next, I have a question. Yeah, so yes, how General
So
Peterson.
rather than Mr. Maynard, I do recommend, rather than going through your series of questions, we take a moment to actually respond versus you giving up. Absolutely.
Well, I was just using your guys'
We want to be mindful that we are going to allow others the opportunity. So we will provide you a couple more, and then we'll see if anybody else has any other questions.
Okay.
So in regards to your first question, we have been participating in radio station and interviews regularly. In fact, we are averaging about 3 to 4 radio stations on a regular basis. As can be imagined, things happen for one reason or the other, and so sometimes the radio interview does have to be rescheduled. Note that the radio stations that we are commonly on include WTJX, as well as WLDV with the Vibe in the Morning. Also on the Administrator's Corner. You can often tune in to Mario Moorhead as well as Jamila Russell to hear updates in addition to Ali Abdul. In fact, later this afternoon at 12 o'clock, we'll be on Ro FM and we'll provide updates there. We have also expanded our outreach to radio stations to include Spanish stations with the support of the Office of the Governor, Ms. Elizabeth Centeno, have been very gracious to provide us with Spanish translation. So we've been on Roomba as well as on Puppy Love, and we'll continue to do so. We do try our absolute best to maintain our commitment when we do advertise that we are going to appear on a particular radio station. And at times, on neither end, it does have to be rescheduled, but we understand that we do want to maintain that commitment when we do put that information out there. So we do ask for some grace as we continue to share with the community, specifically on the radio, and as mentioned, the other mediums that we utilize to provide those updates. You have another question?
Yes, and just quick response. It's the fact that you guys are giving the updates, it's the accountability for when you do not show up, not to simply take down the ad, to put up an update saying that we will not be there because any reason in the world is sufficient. But to simply take down an ad when you have posted for telling people that you will be somewhere, that is accountability is what I'm asking for. The next question is for Vitima. Do you think that every elderly person is covered by Meals on Wheels? And do you have a plan to make sure that water distribution as well as faucet distribution is properly covered for those who will not be able to get to WAPA themselves?
So one of the things that we ensured throughout the time. Oh, well, actually, it's all right. In this case, I would like to note that one of the things that we did decide in the beginning was ensuring that we made distribution accessible. The incident commanders have mentioned time and time again that we have a tactical planning meetings, we have command and staff meetings, we also have planning meetings on a daily basis where we really looked at ensuring we were meeting customers to where they are. One of the first things we ensured is that in order to allow the elderly to receive their vouchers is that folks could pick up vouchers on behalf of family members. Further, not only did we extend for voucher distribution for Meals on Wheels participants, but we also extended for individuals who are on the waiting list. And so this was a huge group. And then lastly, as was mentioned, for the private communities, as well as the housing authority communities that are in the impacted areas, we have actually delivered those to their managers so that those individuals, including the elderly, can go to their managers at their community versus having to come down to the distribution centers. It is important to note that most of our elderly actually do come to WAPA when they're paying their bill. And for folks who send someone to pay their bill, we have opened up regular hours for folks to pick up their vouchers there as well, which is servicing the elderly. As mentioned earlier, with the feedback that we received from former Congresswoman Donna Christensen, we're also extending additional support to the Housing Finance Authority communities that have elderly that need to receive their vouchers. Keeping in mind, this is just phase 1 of the relief, and we'll continue to provide additional relief as
Okay.
for
Thank you.
those areas.
Another question I have is for DPNR. They have cited the previous years from 2016 to 2020. Where can the public find those results to be able to verify exactly what they've been saying, that we were compliant up until more exploratory, or until EPA did some testing in the wrong way, essentially. So where can we find those results for DPNR? And then the next question also for DPNR is the sampling result that came back for back in Christiansted. Have they tested since they've said that they put in new components? Have they done sampling since then in Christiansted?
So,
Yes, this is Mr. Mark.
Mr. Mark,
Yes, this is Mr. Mark from DPNR. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was only going to note, so the quality reports are actually already posted, and they're posted on WAPA's website, and they can be found under water quality reports, and you can find the previous results from the testing. And you can go ahead, Mr. Mark. Thank you.
Yes, that is exactly what my answer was going to be. That that data should be on WAPA's website, and also that WAPA also issues an annual report each year. It's called a Consumer Confidence Report, and the data it's always presented in that report for each year.
So one of the things, Chanel, that we said we would do is we want to make sure that the Clean Water USVI website is all encompassing. So if we don't have this specific report, we know it's posted on WAPA's website, but if on the Clean Water USVI, it can either be a hyperlink that brings people back to the WAPA reporting on their website or something like that. We said that we would try and make Clean Water USVI a one-stop shop. We discussed that last week after we did the town hall in Frederickstead, and it sounded like that was something that wasn't going to be an issue. So we can just follow up and make sure that that continues to build as that one-stop shop for all the information as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Clement Lewis, you are recognized to ask your question.
Good morning. I have two short questions. One of them is I've been helping some of my clients go on and try to fill out the form when you handed out the link for the vouchers. Is there an income requirement? Because it says that on the link, you have to be receiving some kind of special assistance or low income, even if you're in one of the areas that was marked as possibly an issue. Can you clear that up for me? And the second question is, will anybody be going out and checking the water at the nonprofits that have shelters? So like I have a shelter, we have some homeless shelters, or are we responsible for doing that ourselves? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. So eligibility are these three things, and only these three things. You have to have an active WAPA water account. You have to be within the impacted neighborhoods, and you have to have water usage over the past 6 months or more. So there is no eligibility in regards to income. All residences who meet those three pieces of criteria are eligible to pick up their vouchers, which are currently still being distributed at the Sunny Isles Business Office. Individuals can confirm their eligibility by putting in their account number at cleanwaterusvi.com. If they have challenges with that, they can always email customer service at customer.service@viwapa.vi. And then they can also call customer service to verify eligibility, to confirm that they meet those three pieces of criteria at 773-2250. And so there shouldn't be any communication out there indicating that, and we don't, on the WAPA's end, don't have any communication that indicates that there's any ineligibility based on income. Commissioner Oriole, would you like to respond to the second question?
I didn't
Perhaps
get
Ms. Lewis
sorry.
can, no
I
problem,
was-
Ms. Lewis, go ahead.
I was actually gonna put it either to Noel or to Noel or Don,
Yeah,
because again, we're asking, we know what our minimum sample amount is, which is gonna be 5 within the quadrant. What we've been trying to do is get the right of entry. We even asked for volunteers through the governor's press briefing on Monday. So I'll leave that to Don, but again, we want to make sure that we're using areas that are active in terms of there is regular usage. And if a shelter qualifies for that, then we want to make sure that we're included, but we don't have it significant. So I'll let Don continue on that.
Yes, good morning again, Don Gregoire, Director of Water. If you know, we are looking for willing participants for this last round of sampling. If you definitely would like your location to be one of those 80+ locations, I think Chanel did share the email. You could send her an email at communications, and then we will look at your account and definitely include you on the list once you're eligible. You know, we are looking for locations again that are constantly using WAPA water. And then we would basically, once you qualify, we'd set a time, then we could set up the sampling, and there's a stagnation period also that you can't use the water on the faucet for a certain period of time as well. But definitely if anybody on this call or any businesses are interested in getting the testing done at their facilities or restaurants or businesses, we will definitely consider you and put you on the list once you're eligible.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ms. Lewis, for your question. There is a question that's in the chat. And the question, it's more of a statement, so I'll just clarify the statement. Louis E. Brown, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, once they are utilizing WAPA's water, they have received their vouchers. So if there are individuals at Louis E. Brown who have not received their vouchers, they simply need to inquire with the management's office, because they did receive the vouchers, and so they have been distributing since we began distribution in late November. All right, so we're gonna go to the next question from Austin Moorhead. You're recognized.
Morning.
Good morning.
I want to start by thanking all the agencies for bringing this information to the public and being accessible. All agencies that are participating. I think I have a question for Department of Health, for WAPA, and maybe even DPNR. One of the questions concerns the sampling that's taking place now. And I was wondering, for this particular sampling initiative, what's the sample size that we are looking at? The total amount of samples that we're looking at collecting.
You're on mute, Don.
Yes.
I didn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, so with this latest round of sampling, if you recall, the first set of sampling we did at the meter. The sequential sampling was done at the tap. You know, that's based on EPA's protocol. This last round of sampling will be done at the tap. So it's going to be a total of 2 samples per location. So right now we're looking for at least 80 locations to include residential, business. We're looking at some additional schools. So if we do about 80, we're looking at possibly over 160 samples total that will be taken, which would represent the entire water distribution system.
Yeah, and I'm glad you used the word represent, because that's the issue that I wanted to address. If we are looking at over 160 samples and saying that that sample size is going to represent the population of interest, and I'm going to define the population of interest for myself, and I'm going to define it as 1 liter samples of lead throughout the distribution system. And the whole idea is that when we take these samples, we want this subset of samples of the entire distribution based on the results to represent the entire distribution system. Why then is the routine monitoring sample size much smaller? And I think it's like, you can tell me, isn't it around 30 or between 30 and 60 samples?
So the initial sampling that we've been compliant with is the 3-year sampling, and we got moved to the 3 years because obviously there wasn't any high elevations, and we were also be able to maintain that 90 percentile. So we were on the 3-year lead and copper samples, which we've been compliant with. And that's the regulatory sample. So I think with what has happened, we've been talking with DPNR, we're going to be raising those, because it's 30 homes for St. Croix and 30 homes for St. Thomas and St. John. So I know we've been having conversations with DPNR and increasing the amount of samples we take on a regulatory basis, and also increase the duration that we take those samples. So to answer your question, we will be taking more samples based on the regulation, but this is just a surveillance sampling that we're going to be doing now to make sure that we ain't miss anything, and we could definitely start to clear some of these communities that we have not been in as yet.
Well, see, that's where the disconnect lies, because under the routine sampling, the 30 samples is deemed based on the regulatory framework to be representative. If we're now taking 160 samples to say that's more representative, the question sort of like comes up in people's mind, whether or not, since that I think that the regulatory agency, I don't want to speak for them, could be a little bit more stringent than what EPA recommends, why aren't we taking more samples? That's one thing. The other question that I want to address is, I think that we need to be clear with people when we, and not that you're intentionally being unclear, but when you talk about the 90th percentile, essentially, if you're looking at, let's say, 30 samples, you're looking at that, I think that 27th sample, and you're looking at that 27 samples to see whether or not that 27th sample exceeds the threshold or action level. That means that we're allowing a certain amount of samples to be above the threshold. Isn't that correct? And if we're allowing a certain amount of samples to be above the threshold, when I want to mention this again, when science says that there's no level that is safe, there is some concern that should be placed on that particular approach. And I'm not suggesting now that we disrupt the entire regulatory framework, but I want the Virgin Islands to be different than Flint, Michigan. And I want the Virgin Islands to ask these questions and not don't simply accept what the status quo is based on existing regulation. And that's one. The other thing is that, and this is a different question probably for you to WAPA, I don't know if a list has been published on the amount of devices that have been identified or on the process of investigation to determine how many devices within the distribution system has been identified as being potentially a device that could leach lead into the water, and whether or not those devices are on the distribution side or on the service line side. I'm making that distinction because I am not sure that the investigation covers both, because it may be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that any component that is on the service line side really is the responsibility of the people being served rather than that of WAPA. So I want to know how comprehensive that approach is. And I want to know if you're going to publish at some point in time what the target date is for completing that investigation and what the schedule is that's going to be attached to that piece of work, that important piece of work.
Yeah, good morning, Noel Hodge, CEO WAPA. On that last question, we do have a timeline in terms of required lead service inventory that's required by the EPA, and they've given us a deadline of October of 2024 to have that completed. We just sent the request for proposal to be advertised for bids. So that is in the works, and that's going to be territorially to go in there and identify all the lead service components, service lines. So that's what we have on that last question.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. So I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. We do have 2 additional hands that are raised. So I'd like to go on to Mr. Masonet, and excuse that pronunciation.
I have a question for Department of Health, but if you want to proceed, you can proceed.
Yeah, good morning. First question, do we have somebody from the Department of Education in this meeting?
We do not have a representative today for the business town hall. Is there a specific question? Because we are being mindful that we're really gearing this town hall towards small business concerns. With the community town hall that is scheduled in January, we'll be sure to have additional agencies that can speak specifically to the community's concerns outside of small businesses.
Yeah, because the person from the Department of Health, she talked about the students that they test. So we need to know, I need to know, and I know somebody, if we have any recycling plan from the Department of DPNR, EPA, that give it to the schools or the students in the island and the teacher to let them know how to handle this situation, because this is today is going to be the copper that Mr. Gregor said we have in the water, but tomorrow if we continue to give plastic like we do right now, in 3 years, 5 years from now, we're going to test plastic in the blood. And in each trailer we receive in the island is more than 40,000 small bottles, 16 ounces bottle of water. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. In regards to maintain, I will ask that Department of Health reach out to you separately to respond to that and their initiatives on protecting and keeping the children safe here within the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Genevieve Whitaker, you're recognized.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ms. Peterson. Good morning, all of our officials who are on. As I'm just going to just zone in on small businesses. I've actually owned one for 15 years, but I want to know that the focus on particularly those small businesses that use a lot of water. And so can we just want to hear a little bit more about what relief is being provided to the small businesses who, of course, ones who have to maybe flush their systems, and what kind of relief is going to be provided to them, because of course in their case they spend a lot more money on water, so by way of credits. And then just to touch on Mr. Moorhead's point, he made a very good point around we talk about different levels and we're going back and forth about what's safe and what's what's the level that EPA has an action to take. I think we have to just be mindful of the fact that we have to focus on zero. And I would continue to put out that As we go forward with what materials we're going to being mindful, because we do live in a country that does not necessarily have the highest order of environmental protection. I know we have EPA folks on, they've done very diligent work, but also they do work within what is the federal law and we do work within our local law that doesn't always necessarily protect us. So I want to be just us being mindful of that we can exceed the basic requirements to ensure our people are safe. Thanks.
Thank you. CO Hodge?
Yes, so back to one of the questions that Mr. Moorhead had asked. For those customers that test outside of the 90 percentile, it's not that we just let it go. It triggers like a public customer outreach to give them information in terms of what they can do in terms of addressing any issues that may be related to the internal plumbing. And then also we look at investigating whether or not the possible source is coming from the WAPA water. So it's not that we just let the other 10% go. And so I just wanted to, clear that up. And then in terms of the regulatory sampling for lead and copper, we are already in discussions and with DPNR and EPN, most likely, and we probably might hear this soon, that based on this situation, instead we will be going back to I anticipate a more frequent sampling. We're currently at every 3 years, but it's likely now that we're going to go back to every 6 months and then possibly double the number of sampling in each district. Those are talks we've already had. I'm expecting that those will be finalized soon. I don't want to speak ahead out of turn, but I'm just letting you know that we're just not like taking it like business as usual. We know that this is triggering more stringent and more frequent testing in terms of lead and copper protocol for regulatory compliance.
Thank you. We are at this time going to take one more question, and then we will go ahead and go to closing remarks. Mr. Moorhead?
Yes, thank you again. And I appreciate, Mr. Hodge, your response. I just wanted to underscore the fact that given that we are taking 160 samples now, 60 or so more samples, and we're saying that we're doing this because we feel that this is representative of the distribution system, that is 1 liter of water with lead, and that is the statistical population of interest. To go back to a less amount and to consider that amount, regardless of whether it's at 6 months, and I appreciate that also. I think that is a really good move by, and I'm sure it's triggered by the program manager of DPNR. I think that that's a great move. I think that at some point in time, we're going to have to explain to the folks why going to a lesser amount, 60 samples, is as representative as the 160 that we're taking now to try to make sure that we quote unquote catch everything. My final question is this: to the Department of Health regarding the lead blood testing, regarding the pathophysiology of lead in the body, and that is just how it interacts with your body. And I know that lead blood testing is the ideal way for trying to determine whether or not problems exist. But I'm wondering, how long does the lead stay in your blood? And does it diffuse to other organisms? Organs, I'm sorry, and accumulate in other organs in your body? And if that's the case, how much information are we really learning from just lead blood sampling? Because I think that the half-life of lead in your blood is about just 30 days. So in other words, I want to get a fuller picture of the lead blood testing is really good information, but isn't there another part of the story that we should be told about as it relates to exposure to lead?
Dr. Ellis, are you still on? Okay. Yes. The premise of your question is relevant in that been told that the blood level testing that's being done represents the lead in your body for the last 3 to 4 months. And lead accumulates in your bone over time. So that information I can confirm. However, we will get back to you with Dr. Ellis's response to your question, or Dr. Hunt's response to your question.
Right, and just want to add that as it relates to body burden, it's not just the bones, but I think that there are other organs as well, like your kidneys, liver, and maybe even brain, in addition to your bone where it accumulates. But I appreciate your response, Assistant Commissioner Malloy, and thank you very much for participating and sharing the information with the public.
Hello, this is Mr. Mark here. Just like to to follow up on some of the things that Mr. Moed was saying in terms of the number of samples that are collected, whether it's always based on what the law requires. But however, when we're doing the lead and copper testing, it's geared towards measuring the effectiveness of corrosion control, or the corrosion control technology that the water system is implementing. So in a case like that, we could honestly say that the number of samples are truly representative. Because you want to make sure that WAPA is maintaining an optimal corrosion control technology, and that at the user's taps, that technology is preventing the leaching of lead or copper that may be present, whether in the interior home plumbing or in WAPA's plumbing material in their lines and so forth. In looking at that, we can say that, you know, the EPA's regulations that establishes a certain number, or random number of samples, again based on a population that is being served, that you can actually measure that the effectiveness of that corrosion control technology, and that is what the sampling is pretty much geared towards. So you would expect that anyone else in that sample area who is not being sampled and potentially may have some plumbing material that may contain lead and copper, that you have some good representative samples that are saying that water system is maintaining an effective enough corrosion control technology, so you don't see the leaching of lead and copper in 90% or more of those samples. Does that shed some light in terms of why you know, the number of samples are what is based on, and why it can be representative even when it's reduced?
Yes, Mr. Mark, thank you so much for your response. The area where I would like to, you know, make a recommendation is that and this is not on DPNR side, okay? This is mostly WAPA, that it suggests or implies that what WAPA is doing now with 160 samples is different than to determine the effectiveness of corrosion control, because they're dealing with 168 samples. And I'm not saying that they are, but the implication is, based on your response, is that their objective is different than the objective of the compliance program, which is to determine effectiveness of corrosion control. And if for some reason that 168 from what we're being told, seems to be representative, and it's going to really, let us look at the system in such a thorough way that we are not missing anything. I think that an explanation needs to be provided from some source that explains some of what you're explaining, Mark, which is the difference between the regulatory number that's denoted and those numbers. I believe in the EPA guidance, they were designed for large systems on the mainland. I don't think that they tailored those regulations to systems like the Virgin Islands, even though it addresses the number of people in the community. So, but thank you so much. Don't want to prolong this.
Okay.
I appreciate your input.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moorhead.
Yeah, Austin, I do want to answer one portion of your question though. We, in layman's terms, for this last round of surveillance, we are 100% aware that we're going for overkill. 100%. And you know why? It's because the objective is related not to compliance monitoring, but actually to address the fact that a state of emergency was enacted. And so we need to ensure that nobody comes back and says, oh, 11 sequential samples were done. That's not truly representative, or that doesn't give me any confidence, or 60 samples, that doesn't give me any confidence. So I can say that for this particular effort, not compliance monitoring, but for this particular effort, overkill is an absolute must.
And that's the kind of information I think that is helpful, Commissioner, that would allow the residents to understand what to change. Thank you.
Thank you. I do apologize. We do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and you have provided some very great recommendations and questions. And by all means, if you would like to continue outside of this immediate town hall, feel free to leave your contact information in the chat, and we'll be sure to share that with DPNR so you can get that additional information, and the notes are noted to share with the community. I would like to start to go to closing comments, and I will start off with DPNR and then with Department of Health and end off with WAPA, both from Noel and Don.
Thank you, Chanel, and again, good day to everyone. So we understand what this state of emergency has caused throughout the community. And again, our mission right now is to make sure that we have sampled the system thoroughly to be able to present to the people of St. Croix that any change that was necessary in order to state deliberately that the water is safe, that we're taking those actions. And there's a number of things that are taking place, whether it's the sampling, the replacement of parts, the new injections, changing the corrosion control inhibitor. All of those things are combined efforts that will get us to the point where not only will we address lead and copper, we really truly believe that the issue that started all of this, which is the red and brown water, you're going to see that the rust-tainted color is going to start to dissipate because the corrosion control inhibitor will in fact have a change on that as well. And so, we're trying to, particularly with the businesses, high level of usage for that water, we recognize that you all are an essential stakeholder in providing that confidence to, and wanting to make sure that both the residents and the businesses on St. Croix are rest assured that significant action is being undertaken to then be able to present back to the community that we have addressed the issues that brought us to this point today. So just want to say thank you all for attending. We're always here to answer more questions, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year's to all. Thank you.
Thank you. AC Malloy, your closing remarks?
Good morning. I'd like to thank you, Chanel, Ms. Peterson, and WAPA for affording us this opportunity to again provide the community with information on and clarification on what has occurred, what is occurring, and what we are doing in response. I would like to thank the participants for your continued input. It is by your input that we're able to make decisions that take into account your various perspectives, and we marry it with the facts as we know it. As we continue to build your trust that we are doing our best to ensure that you are operating or existing in a safe, healthy as possible environment. I can tell you that the persons who have been at this for a while, and we have been trying to do the best by our community, and because we are members of the community, and we are also affected. So in addition to being empathetic, we are also affected, so that you know that we're doing the best we can for you and for ourselves, just to add a added level of assurance. So thank everyone for their continued effort. And yes, please, we use this opportunity to gather data. So please complete the surveys, because this is how we get information from you and get what you're thinking, and again to guide us in our decision making on your behalf. So I encourage you to participate in the outreach as your schedule allows. And thank you again for providing us this opportunity and information you were able to provide. Back to you, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, AC Malloy. I'll start off with Don Gregoire, and then we'll end with Noel Hodge, COO, closing remarks.
Yes, good morning again. I just want to thank everybody for attending the meeting. Definitely some good information being shared, and I always welcome the public input in these kind of issues. I just wanted to say one thing, that one of our biggest gaps we have realized is that we within the territory, we don't have no means of testing for lead and copper. All our samples have to be sent off island, which it kind of hampers our decision making to be timely, because sending the samples off island sometimes takes several days before we get results. So that's one of the things I know Commissioner is working on, that we could have sampling capabilities on island. So increase and monitor obviously is an option, but having the capabilities on island is definitely going to move us forward. But thanks again.
Yes, I want to thank the business community for your involvement and your input and your candid discussion today. One of the things that we began this journey, the incident commanders made it clear that out of the abundance of caution, that we'll go above and beyond and really be data driven. Wherever the data takes us, once it's good data. And so that's what we've done, and we've embraced that. And so even with that, there's still some gaps, and you've pointed some of those out today, and we thank you for that. We've been taking notes, and we're going to make improvements. So I think, this is a good effort. We're well on our way, and want to remind you and encourage you to volunteer to have your business or your facilities tested. We're looking for volunteers. So please go ahead and respond to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to all of our presenters. Thank you for the supporting agencies who have been on the line, listening in, standing ready to answer questions. Thank you to our translators, Ms. Gladys Collins providing the Spanish translation, Mr. Kervins Benjamin Adrian providing the French Creole translation, and to both of our ASL interpreters who have made themselves available to provide that access. And then again, of course, thank you to our business owners, as well as the media who are present here today and have allowed the business owners to voice their concerns and to share their thoughts. As mentioned, due to not being able to go Facebook live stream, we were actually able to go on YouTube live stream, but we will still be providing the recording on Facebook for individuals to view. We have dropped into the chat the email for those interested in the testing. That's communications@viwapa.vi. To take the DOH survey, they can visit cleanwaterusvi.com/resources. And for the EPA results, they can visit www.epa.gov/vi/US-Virgin-Islands-Drinking-Water. Thank you all again, and it has been an enjoyable time, and happy holidays and season's greeting. Thank you, and you can now drop off the line. Take care.